Today I'm going to give you a quick start with PHP, and before the tutorial ends, you will learn how to apply a basic light or dark mode to your page with PHP. Hello and welcome. My name is Dave, and I'm a full-time developer and I teach university web development courses. My goal is to help you learn how to build the web, and if you want to see more of that, click the subscribe button you see right over there. So let's get started. For our quick intro to PHP, we need to start with the XAMPP control panel, and from there we'll start the Apache local server, and that's what will enable us to run PHP on our local dev environment. Now that that's started, I'll go ahead and minimize that, and you can see I've got a folder open here, and if I highlight that, it's in the XAMPP folder on my C drive. I'm using Windows. And then in the htdocs folder, I've created a folder named quick_intro. And XAMPP will serve, actually Apache will serve your PHP pages from the htdocs folder. So wherever you've installed XAMPP, you want to find the htdocs folder and then create a folder there for this project. And inside that folder then is what we will open, or we will open that actual folder in Visual Studio Code. And you can see I have the quick intro folder over here in the file tree. I've already created a CSS folder and a main CSS file. And now we want to click New File and create index. I'm on the wrong keys. Index.php. There we go. And if you like the little icons, like I have the PHP icon and the CSS3 icon here on the folder, you can click Extensions, search for VS Code-icons, and from there click VS Code-icons and you can install, I have the uninstall button, this VS Code icons extension, and you too will get those little icons over here in your file tree. Now, PHP was originally a template engine, and so it creates mixed files if we want to, with HTML and PHP both mixed in. You can have files that just have PHP, but quite often you have HTML with PHP mixed into that. So I'm going to start out with this Emmet abbreviation and start an HTML page. Let me go ahead and hide the file tree so we have a little more room to work. And you can see I have the typical skeleton here for an HTML page. I'll change the title to Quick Intro to PHP. And above the doc type, it is not uncommon to see some PHP. So that's where we'll start with embedding PHP into our document. And it starts out just like an HTML tag, and then the question mark, and then PHP. And then let me return a couple of lines, and then a question mark, and close out the tag. And between these opening and closing tags, we can put our PHP. Here I'm going to define a couple of variables. I'll define mode, and notice it starts with a $sign. There's no let or const like we would see, say, in JavaScript, but this is the variable mode, and I'll just assign it a string value of dark, and then I'll end the line with a semicolon, much like you would see in other languages, including JavaScript. And then I'm going to do one and put my name in there. And now I wouldn't have to put a semicolon after this. The last semicolon before the closing PHP tag here is optional. However, it doesn't hurt to put it, and I just kind of do it out of habit, so I'm going to put one anyway. Once we've saved that, we can go ahead and look at bringing some of these values down into the body of our page to display them. And in PHP, you use what is called an echo statement, and then you can display the value of a variable. Now I'll save this much, and notice in the browser I have localhost and then the folder name, and that's what should bring up the index.php by default. So when I press return, and now I've got Dave on the page, and if I wanted this to be a string, I could do it that way too, and I could start with a double quote and then say hello, and then I like to put curly braces around, even though they're not required. This is just much more like a template literal from JavaScript that way. So but hello Dave would be the value for name, and then in the double quote there, I'll go ahead and save this. Now in one line where I don't have other lines, putting the semicolon doesn't seem as important to me, so I'm not going to. And if we reload, we've got hello Dave. Now we can add in HTML tags right inside this string value to be sent to the browser. And now we've got an H1 on the page. Or we could put HTML tags outside of the PHP. And I'll just cut this one out and put it underneath. There we go. Save that and reload. And we've got the same thing. So the PHP can really be inserted anywhere in the page. I'll give an example in a little bit where we can also put it right inside the HTML tag. Let's head back up to our top section of PHP and look at the different PHP data types. I'm going to add a one-line comment, and notice it's just like I would add a single line comment in CSS with the 2 slashes, and I'll put data types. Also, you can do this in PHP like you would in Python with the hashtag for a comment. And then you could also, if you have more than one line, for example, and I'll press Shift, Alt, and A, but you can do multi-line comments with the slash asterisk and then close out with the asterisk slash. Now here I did it all on one line, but this could be a multi-line comment as well. So I'll come back and I'm going to go ahead and just do that single line comment. Now data types, there are 6 main types. We've already seen the string type. We could also have an integer, and for an integer that would just be a whole number. So let's say num equals 42. And then we also have a double. So here I'll put dub. And now this would be what we would call in some languages more like a float because it has decimals. So I'll put 42.02. And that is a double. Then we have boo, and you might guess that's going to be a Boolean, so true or false. And then we have arrays, and we define them just a little bit different in PHP. So here I'm going to put 1, or let's put the letters A, B, and C. And then there's also objects, but I'm not going to dive into objects right now. That would be better if we cover classes and object-oriented programming in a separate tutorial. But there we've got strings, as in mode up here, or name. We've got numbers, doubles, booleans, and an array. And then remember, there are also objects that I will cover at a later time. Let's go ahead and save and then pull the value from an array into our code down here in the body of our HTML page. So I'm going to echo, and then I'm going to put the array. And here we refer to these just like we would in JavaScript and some other languages, once again, where they start at 0. That's a 0 position for A, so it has 0, 1, 2. If we put a 3, that would be null. There would be no value there. So let's put 2, and we'll see what we get in the browser. Of course, let's close out our paragraph. Now we need to refresh. And I have an error. I did something up above. I forgot to put a semicolon after the value for our dub. So now we'll save and refresh once again. And we've got hello Dave and the letter C underneath that we pulled out of our array. There are a few things to note about variables in PHP. One is they cannot start with numbers. That won't work. And you can see Visual Code's already telling us this isn't going to work. Another thing is they can't start with double underscores. That's reserved for some other things. And then there are some reserved words like this that we cannot use as our own variable in PHP. While I said there are not keywords we're using in front of the variable like let and const, we can define constants in PHP, and that starts out with the define keyword, and then we name our constant inside, and I'll put days underscore in year as a constant, and then I'll give a value of 365. And at that point, we have declared a constant named days in year. And it is traditional to name those in all caps. And then we can refer to this in our code. We don't need a $sign in front of it or anything else like that. So we could come down here and I'll just replace that array value and I'll put days in year right inside our PHP code. And then I'll refresh and we have 365 on the page. When we're working with strings, we can concatenate or combine strings in several ways. Let me define one more variable. And here we'll put the hello. And let's leave the space out even. There we go. Greeting with just hello. And now if we come back, you can see we've already kind of concatenated a string with a variable here because we've had the word hello. And this is more like a template literal from JavaScript. But now we've already got hello in a variable. So let's change how we're doing this. We'll say greeting, and then we concatenate with the period. But we need to, of course, have that space in there as well. So then we'll space, create a space, and then we'll concatenate again with the space and the name value. And as you might guess, we'll need to do that one more time for the exclamation mark. Well, exclamation mark, there it is. So now if we save this, we won't have the comma unless we could put our comma right here in this space if I can. Visual Studio Code's kind of giving me a pop-up in the way. All right, let's go ahead and refresh. Yes, and now we've got hello, comma, Dave. But we've concatenated this phrase with the two different variables. And we could go back and do it the other way that looks more like a template literal. And that is probably how I would do it, but I wanted to show this as an example as well. If we want to add more to the end of a string, we can also do that with PHP with a combination operator. So I'll create an extra line here and return one more line. And for our greeting, before we print this, I'll say greeting dot equals, and that means greeting equals what's already in greeting plus, and I'll put space, and I'll say comma, how are you, and then we'll remove this comma, and it will kind of at least make sense. So we'll save that. Oh, and once again, I left out the semicolon. Save that, and now there's no error. Refresh, and we have hello, how are you? And then an exclamation mark after my name might not make so much sense. But anyway, you see how to add a value onto the end of a string with that. At this point, it might make sense to add some line breaks. The hello, how are you? And then exclamation mark Dave part here isn't really working for me. So let's go ahead and just add an HTML tag for a line break right inside the string. If we save that, you can see that works. Maybe we'll get rid of the exclamation point at some point, but let's leave it for now. But we can do something else too in Visual Studio Code or just in PHP in general. We can add this nl2br function, and there we can add that around the string that we're going to put a line break in. And then we can use the new line, the escape character with an N, and that also creates a new line in PHP. And you can see we still get the same result. PHP also has the same basic math operators that we're used to in some other languages like JavaScript. And so here we could add +1 to days in the year. And let's make this a little larger as well. So I'll just get rid of this part. And we'll make this the H1. Save that so you can see the number better. And now we get 366. Likewise, we can subtract 1. And we can multiply, and let's multiply by 2 so we can see something different. We can divide. And we can even find the remainder. I'll create another variable and we can look at compound operators. We'll set days equal to 1, and then we can use a compound operator with that. So we could have down here, this of course is a constant, so I'm not doing that. We'll have days plus equals to, let's say 10. If we save that and refresh, we now have 11. If we do minus equals, minus 9. Multiplication and division. And let's even look at the modulo. Something you may be used to seeing from other languages is a counter variable. So let's set counter equal to 1. We'll create another line on our PHP. And here I'll say counter increment with the plus plus. And then here we'll go ahead and echo counter. Save that and reload. And now we've got 2. Or we could go ahead and decrement. I previously mentioned that PHP ignores everything outside of its opening and closing tags. Let's go ahead and look at another more complex example of that, and we'll give that greeting statement another run here. So we'll say hello, and once again I'll bring the curly braces back, the name variable, exclamation mark, and now we're closing that out. That looks good. Save that. We'll see if we have any mistake. Looks good. Now remember our mode variable that we started with way back here at the beginning. In our CSS, I've created a dark class. And by referencing this variable, we'll be able to switch over to a dark mode, but we have to do that inside the HTML tag. So with that in mind, let's go ahead. We need to do this on the body actually. Let's go ahead and start our PHP right inside that tag. So there's our opening PHP, and then we're going to add an if statement. And there's our mode variable. Now I'll use a strict equals, just like we would in JavaScript. And then the dark string. Now notice this is different if you're coming from JavaScript. This is more like Python, where we have a colon there. And from there, let's close out the first part of our PHP. Now in an if statement, the part we put after this will only appear if the statement is true. And in this instance, we want to put class equals dark. And after that, we need to start another PHP statement and end the if statement, and then close our PHP statement. And then notice we have the closing caret for, or the closing greater than sign for the HTML body tag. So we have the body tag started. Then we do our PHP inside the element, right to there. And then the last character is our closing part of the body tag. Now let's save this. Let's go ahead and add that CSS to our page. And now when we refresh, we have a dark mode. But if we change this to some other value than dark, we have a light mode again. And that is just one example of how we can apply PHP directly to an HTML element. This is just the tip of the iceberg for PHP. Many more tutorials to come, including form data with GET and POST requests, conditionals such as if statements, loops, and functions, and projects also. In the meantime, check out the videos on the left. They may help you on your coding journey. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate the support, and I'll see you next time.